Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the HODLNOTS Weekly Warm-Up. I'm John,
I'm Vicky.
and it is the news at 9 a.m. UTC. With that, let's get into some of the crypto headlines from the last week or so.
Yes, and the first one we have all kind of seen today. So the US Fed makes its first rate cut of 2025, but last week the crypto space reacted with it didn't really do much. So the US Federal Reserve has, as expected last week, cut interest rates by 25 base points. It was the first such cut of the year, and most analysts had anticipated it. The crypto market, however, barely reacted. So while the crypto market usually benefits from these rate cuts, the lack of market reaction suggests it was already priced into the market. So as we saw, it didn't really do anything when the announcement, and in fact, today it went down. So we'll watch this space to see if it goes back up.
More on Bitcoin price action in a short bit. But for now, Binance Global is seeking the Department of Justice deal that could end its 2023 compliance monitor. So the DOJ is reportedly considering lifting a 3-year compliance monitor imposed under Binance's $4.3 billion settlement. So Binance is reportedly in talks with the U.S. Department of Justice to remove a key oversight measure from its 2023 settlement agreement, a change which, if approved, could ease regulatory and compliance pressures on the cryptocurrency exchange. Is this bullish news for those in the States? We sure do hope so. More on this in later episodes. Over to you, Vicky.
Yeah, they need some good news. And unfortunately, Canada had a bit of bad news over the weekend where $40 million was seized and destroyed in Canada's largest crypto crackdown. And that left users furious. So the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, is Federal Policing Eastern Region, has announced that the largest cryptocurrency seizure in Canadian history after seizing more than 56 million Canadian dollars from the platform Trade Ogre. So the operation was carried out by investigators specializing in financial crime, cybercrime, and cryptocurrencies. It is also the first time Canadian law enforcement has dismantled a cryptocurrency exchange. So authorities discovered that Trade Ogre violated Canadian financial laws, particularly for failing to register with the Financial Transaction and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada, which is FINTRAC, as a money service business, and for neglecting to verify its users' identity, which is also the KYC that we know. So the seizure sparked heated reactions, though, from the community, as many users expressed anger and concern about the fate of legitimate funds, questioning whether Canadian authorities intend to confiscate balances that originated from lawful sources. It was argued that penalizing all account holders simply because the exchange did not enforce Know Your Customer or KYC procedures would amount to theft from innocent users. So we need to watch this space fairly closely because of another exchange that our Canadian members use. So I think we'll be watching this space, John.
Absolutely. Now, going back over to Bitcoin, we'll talk about the Bitcoin price shortly. But Michael Saylor says Bitcoin may go boring as institutional interest ramps up. So we all know Michael Saylor from Strategy said that the lower Bitcoin volatility benefits mega institutions, but disappoints thrill seekers who thrive on price swings. Now, most of us don't scalp trade Bitcoin. It doesn't have that much volatility, and it does become a bit boring, but this is good for these big institutions. Bitcoin is becoming more appealing to institutional investors, which may come at a cost of this thrill that attracts so many retail investors, says Michael Saylor. He says, you want the volatility to decrease so that mega institutions feel comfortable entering the space and with their size. He also says that this is part of the normal growing stage and a natural part of Bitcoin's life cycle, and that the volatility coming out of the asset is a good sign. So basically, Bitcoin becomes stable. Many more institutions see this as a safer asset with less risk to be able to entering and diversifying portfolios, and hence why we've seen so many global institutions getting into Bitcoin and adding it to their balance sheets. So while it's boring, that's okay. We trade, we scalp trade, we HODL trade, all of these other coins which have really good volatility. Anyway, over to you.
Exactly. So that doesn't, it'll be interesting how it affects the market, though, if it gets more stable. So we need to watch that too. And speaking of instability, actually, so FTX, I don't know if everyone on the call remembers, but FTX imploded a couple of years ago and taking everyone's funds with them. But some good news for people that actually were affected by FTX, because the FTX Recovery Trust announced a third creditor distribution of $1.6 billion. So the FTX Recovery Trust is the organization tasked with repaying former customers and creditors of the defunct exchange, and it's announced a third distribution of nearly 1.6 billion. So the distribution will begin on September 30th, and funds will be transferred to creditors via the BitGo, Kraken, or Payoneer within 3 business days. So the payment, interestingly enough, prioritizes 2 distinct groups of creditors. The first is the convenience class, which consists of us, the smaller creditors and retail traders. Now, this group makes up the majority of FTX's customer base, and surprisingly, they'll recover approximately 120% of their claims. So ultimately, they'll receive more than they lost, which is great news. Now, in contrast, the non-convenience class, which consists of larger institutions and more complex claims, will receive smaller payouts. So this approach is really highlighting FTX's clear priority within the repayment plan, protecting retail customers. So that is great news for FTX customers, of which I know there are a few in our membership. So good for them. They can hopefully get most of their money back from that debacle that happened.
And with a bit of interest.
Mm.
Now, speaking of interest and interesting, Bolivia. This is not the first time that we mentioned Bolivia actually on the weekly warm-up, where it was some of the airports and the duty-free are accepting USDT as an option. Now, in Bolivia, not only is that happening, but Toyota, Yamaha, and BYD, all car brands, are now accepting Tether or USDT in Bolivia as US dollar reserves are starting to shrink even more. So Tether is now being accepted for payments at Toyota, Yamaha, and BYD in Bolivia as businesses increasingly turn to stablecoins to navigate the country's US dollar shortage. Tether CEO Paulo Arduino shared that Toyota, Yamaha, and BYD are taking Tether for payments as of Sunday, while crypto security firm BitGo confirmed that the first Toyota was purchased in Bolivia with USDT on Saturday. So we've spoken about this before as more countries start to adopt cryptocurrencies for payment solutions. There are a bunch of incentives and a bunch of programs on the go in various countries, even in Southeast Asia, but South America seems to be leading the charge in terms of stablecoin and cryptocurrency payment solutions. Exciting times. Hopefully that'll roll out someday in South Africa and the rest of the world as well.
Yeah, that's super fun. I was actually seeing if Marcel was on the call, which he's not, but I just wanted him to share his story about buying his Land Rover with crypto. It's not true, actually, but he said it the other day, which I thought was funny. But you do have a car company over there that does accept crypto, don't you? Or you did?
There was one that's a
Mm.
couple of years ago, and they still are around where they were accepting Bitcoin as payment for their cars. Now, there's another interesting story about, I mean, whether this was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, talking about the appreciation of that as an option. But anyway, let's carry on with the crypto
Yeah.
headlines and get into those stories shortly.
Yeah, I have a follow-up actually. So a couple HODLNOTS no, where are we? The weekly warm-ups ago, we talked about, I think it was actually even last week, the XRP and Doge ETFs that we're going to launch, and they did. So the Rex Osprey Exchange Traded Funds, the ETF, launched with a bang, surprising analysts' expectations on its debut trading day. So that ETF, a collaboration between Rex Shares and Osprey Funds, went live on Cboe BZX Exchange on 18 September, so last week. And XRPR was a fast gainer right from the word go, with the product ranking in 24 million in volume within the first hour and a half on the market. It was up 5 times higher than the first day totals of any XRP futures ETF. Now, the same also can be said about its counterpart, the Dogecoin tracking Rex Osprey Doge ETF, which is DOJE, which debuted on the same day. On Thursday, Balchunas, which is the launcher of this one, initially projected that it would likely reach about 2.5 million in daily trading volume, calling that a decent but unremarkable figure. But within the first hour of going live, trading actively surged to 6 million, so almost double and a bit again. And he said that's shockingly solid, and adding that most ETFs see less than 1 million on their opening day. So the ETFs are booming still.
Speaking about booming, and this is another great feel-good story, and some of you might be able to relate to lost wallets and lost uh, funds on exchanges. Here's a good story, ultimately benefiting somebody who already does get a really good salary, and that is the basketball star Kevin Durant. All right, so he recovered his Coinbase account after nearly 10 years. So we know that Coinbase has a few issues around this in terms of users unable to gain access and their customer service is working very hard. But clearly, you need to be an NBA star to get this really sorted out. Nearly a decade after losing access to his Coinbase account, NBA star Kevin Durant is once again in control of his Bitcoin holdings, according to the exchange CEO Brian Armstrong. So sometime in 2014, 2015, Kevin Durant discovered Bitcoin by watching YouTube videos and gave his agent a little nudge, a little hint, and a little suggestion. Maybe we should look at this. Again, that same year in 2015, after hearing the word Bitcoin several times at a party hosted by Ben Horowitz, who at the time was the co-founder of a venture capital firm, they began, so this is Kevin and his agent, began investing in Bitcoin the very next day. Now, Durant's agent said, fortunately, since then, and the loss of the Coinbase wallet, we've been able to track down his Coinbase account information, and we've never sold anything, and his Bitcoin has just gone through the roof. So, just so you know, losing your Coinbase password means you get locked out of your account, and without recovery details like 2FA or two-factor authentication codes or your email, you can't access your crypto stored there. So they were able to find that, or at least the information, and log back in. Now, to give you an idea, in 2016, when Kevin did add some more and when lost then access to his account, the price of Bitcoin fluctuated between roughly $400 at the start of the year and $1,000 roughly at the end of the year, according to data from CoinGecko. Now, since the end of 2016, when Bitcoin traded at the $1,000, $998, its price has skyrocketed by more than 11,400%, which is currently sitting at about 112,000, well, 400. 11,400% gains. Now, whether he bought $1,000, whether he bought a bit more. Either way, Kevin Durant is very happy because not only was he getting plenty of endorsements, he's still playing, of course, he still gets a great salary. But a nice, good story there. So if you guys have any Coinbase accounts that you just can't get access to anymore, keep trying. You never know. Some of the Bitcoin might have done a little bit better than when it did last. Back to you.
Yeah, and then in what did Marcel, about 4 to 10 years, quantum computers might be able to get that lost Bitcoin back for you as well. So we'll see. And that's a reference to the Happy Hour Hangout. So if you haven't watched that, it will be up shortly, and you can watch that when we talk about quantum computing. Now, this is also a follow-up, this next story. So a couple times ago, we talked about how China might have banned everything crypto, and that actually ended up being false. And this is another story about why it's false. So the first regulated CNH peg stablecoin launches as global competition heats up. So the first stablecoin pegged to the Chinese yuan, which is CNH, launched this week as competition from sovereign governments to claim a piece of the stablecoin market mounts. Financial technology company AnchorX debuted its AXCNH1 backed or one pegged stablecoin on Wednesday at the Belt and Road Summit in Hong Kong. Now, interestingly enough, though, the token is meant for international transactions and not for domestic use on the Chinese mainland. So they're keeping Hong Kong just in reach and they're launching all their crypto-based things there instead of on the mainland, but it's Chinese government is not out of crypto. So there we go.
Yeah, as mentioned last week, we were speaking about stable coins and we were just waiting for the next country. And we knew it was always going to be China to launch their own stable coin to really take on many of the US dollar pegged stable coins that are out there. So definitely watch this space for more on that. Now, last story in the crypto headlines, another interesting one for those of you who use MetaMask. MetaMask token or mask is coming soon. This says, or so says Consensus CEO, that this native cryptocurrency token is on its way. He's also the Ethereum co-founder. Joseph Lubin said that MetaMask will be launching its much anticipated native token in the near future. The news of the arrival of Mask token was broken out by Consensus during talks with a popular crypto publication site. He says, Mask token is coming. It may come sooner than you would expect right now, and it is significantly related to the decentralization of certain aspects on the MetaMask platform. It is important to know that the buzz around MetaMask wallet native crypto has been going on since May this year. Back in May, MetaMask co-founder Dan Finney said that if the token arrives, it will launch directly on the wallet. However, so far, the token's emergence is purely speculative since there have been no developments other than a few comments on tweets. And in fact, MetaMask's official website also has not given any information about it yet. So for those of you in the DeFi space, NFT space, and you utilize MetaMask like we do as well within Bitcoin Trader Forecast and our BTF token, they too will be bringing their own native token. It is not a matter of if, but when. More on that as we update. So moving on from the crypto headlines, ladies and gents, let's have a little look at the fear and greed index because a little bit of fear in the markets this Monday. And Vicky, tell us more.
Yeah, the fear and the fear and greed index for the third week has kind of stayed in neutral territory. I'll be on the fearful side this week, with today's reading about 45, depending on which website you look at. So now, even with the rate cut announcement, as stated previously, the market really hasn't reacted much at all to that. And again, before at least today's drop, the market was going a bit sideways and people were neither buying nor selling. Now, John will show you what happened with Bitcoin. So that could change. So here we go with that.
Yes, on that note, this is the current day chart for Bitcoin. Um, As to this dumping, there has been some speculation that the number of whales have indeed sold off their old, or the OG whales have sold off some of the Bitcoin as well. We knew that Bitcoin was struggling between support of 115 and about 117,000, where that was resistance, and has broken down to 111,800, which is key, which is pivotal in terms of its support. Having a quick look here, we do need to make sure and keep an eye on this at the moment. We know most of the market is a little bit red. Bitcoin has bounced up a little bit since then. But if this trend continues and it does break $111,800, we are going to start to see, as some of you can read this chart and you know what these indicators are starting to do. If this is continued on to break down, we could well revisit lows as low as 103,000 or thereabouts. All right, so at the moment, market not particularly strong at all, but we do need to close, at least I'm thinking we need to close around 114 or so by the end of the day in order for us to stabilize. So there's a little bit of work to do. So go and search amongst the couch cushions, see if you've got a couple of dollars to spare, buy some Bitcoin, get the price up. So again, no point really looking at Bitcoin dominance. because it has come up over, whoops, sorry, that's something else. There it is. Bitcoin dominance. We do need this to start really coming up, which means that the cash flowing into Bitcoin starts to really rise. As mentioned before, we'd like to see it come up to about, yay high, but basically just not breaking down because it's not going to do any good for any of these alts down here. If this is dropping, but Bitcoin's also dropping as well. So again, as we mentioned before, we'd love to see all of that coming to bear. So keep an eye on Bitcoin over the next couple of days, especially today. As long as it doesn't break down below 111,800, we might see a little bit of a recovery. We're all a little tired of Bitcoin going down and the market going down with it. Altcoins are not going to run if Bitcoin isn't stable. Vicky, over to you.
No, exactly. And we need to start talking about that in the lodge. Let's start a conversation in the lodge. And speaking of the lodge is actually a little bit quieter this week for a couple of reasons. So one of the reasons is Wendy is overseas, so it's not a little bit quieter because of that. And because of that, there are less calls. So we had a really, really busy week last week, and it's a little bit quieter, giving everyone else a chance to breathe. So the first call that we need to talk about is Wendy's normal Tuesday call, which is usually at 8 a.m. UTC, but it will be canceled this week because she is overseas and she just cannot get to that one. So again, tomorrow's call canceled. But the week does continue a bit later with that, with our first of 2 weekly calls for those in the self-paced course, and that is at 12 p.m. UTC on Tuesday. Then we do have the special call this week. It's again already been a month for our IPO members. And you will be having your monthly call on Wednesday, 24 September this week at 7 a.m. UTC. So if you are an IPO member, that's your call. And then that will be followed later that day. Now, there has been a slight reschedule because of Wendy's absence as well. So we are having another HODL Fire call this week at 12 p.m. UTC, hosted by you know who. Again, so 12 p.m. UTC, and that will be followed later in the day at 8 p.m. UTC with our second of our our first of the HODL calls, and those are for people that are taking part in the 3M challenge, and that will be hosted by Wendy, so she is able to jump on that call. And then the second of our HODL calls on the 3M challenge will be Thursday at 8 a.m. UTC, and this week it's hosted by Liesel. So it's always great to jump on when there's a different host because you'll get a slightly different take on the trades. So Lisa will be doing that one. And then lastly, on Thursday, we have the second of our self-paced calls for those who are doing the self-paced course. So it's a little bit of a slower week this week. I guess it gives everyone a chance to breathe and analyze the charts and see how we're going to trade this week as well. So that's not a bad thing.
And again, for those that missed it, there was a little announcement last week on Friday. Something hot is happening soon, and that's part of the reason why this week seems a little quieter. There's a lot going on, trust us. More information on that towards the end of this week. But for those of you who were on a certain call last week or 2 calls last week, you might have heard the news. So, yep, there we go. Lovely. Thank you for that reaction. Cool. Well, speaking about things happening, time to limber up, ladies and gents. A little bit of HODL aerobics. This is the third week of the second contest, where we did drop that first letter. Cool. We dropped that first letter the first one. It's the other way around. Uh, that's a weird one. She looks like she's doing a dab there. It's not quite the dab. You've got to get more perpendicular. But yes, all right. So it's that letter. If that makes sense. And then we've got a new one, which is going a little fancy. I think we're doing the cursive version first.
So I'm pretzel this week. It's not going to work. So the pretzel this week doesn't work. So the pretzel this week is kind of wait, other way. This, which
You
doesn't work at all.
bend your
So
arm a bit, but yes, all right.
bend a
Okay.
little. So it's going to be this or this. Which way?
First one.
This one. Okay, it's this week.
Woo, these are getting
Anyone knows what
complex
that
now.
is?
Right. So hopefully you guys are taking notes. We've had 3 letters so far. Will there be a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, a eighth, a ninth, a tenth? We don't know. But you've got 3 letters so far. Anybody wanting to guess? All right. Donna Cian says she's got it, but I think she just got the letter. I wonder if
Ugh.
she'll get the word. I mean, ladies and gents, we need some competition here. We've had three letters so far. If you think you know what it is already, drop it in the lodge. Otherwise, if you're on this call and you're not in the lodge, you can drop it in the Q&A section down below. You've got about 30 seconds in which to do that. So, on that note, what is the weekly thoughts as we go ahead with this quiet week, Vicky?
Oh, well, the weekly thought, and we all do it. Don't say you don't. So, singing in the shower is all fun and games until you get shampoo in your mouth, then it becomes a soap opera.
All right, we're getting into dad jokes at the moment. Weekly thoughts. All right, so skip the shampoo out of your mouth. We don't need those soapies. All right, fantastic. Any guesses? Let's see. Ooh, nice guess. We're not going to say what the word is. You can always pop it in the lodge if you think that's what it is. We've had one guess
Great
already, very
guess.
close. I think
Mm.
that'd be Daphne. Close, but no cigar. Fantastic. Ladies and gents, speaking of, we will catch you on one or two of the calls this week. Don't forget this week, 12 p.m. UTC, otherwise self-paced calls, and all the other rest. And we'll be back next week, Monday, for the 16th edition of the weekly warm-up. Until then, have a great week. See you soon.